Kamala Harris, the vice president, I'm gonna call her vice president now because I keep calling her. She is like in my view, an undervalued talent. She's a very fierce communicator. She's very strong, especially on one of the core issues that made the election maybe won or lost on, which is abortion rights. And this is why I think when she did a couple of interviews after the debate, I was sitting on the set with a bunch of other MSNBC anchors, and everybody was like, that was great. It's like, yeah. That's what she's doing out in the country, and nobody is really tracking it. It's just, that's who she is. But there is a caricature out there. It's almost like public opinion hasn't caught up with what she is doing out there. And also, we live in a country that is sexist and racist. So like, there is that. Not everybody at all, but there is a level of it that does impact elections.
And as far as replacing him, I want to hear if you think who would replace him. I think it's a little late. 50% of this country, or half of them, are in for Trump already. How are you going to convince these people that Sherrod Brown or John Tester can fill the position?
Well, I don't think you should leapfrog over the Vice President of the United States, who has been very has been in the White House side by side. She's been stumping for Joe. She went to the Alpha Kappa Alpha convention at Boulay. She was a superstar there. She spoke at the Essence Festival. She was a superstar there.
We love Kamala. We love her.
Well,
the question is, can she beat Trump?
Yes, she can. No Democratic candidate can win without the black vote. She has that vote. She has a lot of votes.
Wait, are you saying that a white guy in the Democratic Party is not going to get the black vote?
I think it would be very difficult if you leap over a black woman.
Meanwhile,
they taught us that we could do anything and should never be burdened by the limitations of other people to be able or not be able to see what can be. And this is that community who understands and can see what is possible unburdened by what has been.
All right, guys, so we got to continue to talk about the Democrat Party's civil war, because it seems as if the Biden campaign is on its last legs. Now, I am one of these people who before personally believed that Biden was not going to step down, right? I didn't think that Biden was going to fall. However, I'll be lying to you guys if I told you that I wasn't second guessing my original opinion on whether or not Biden would drop out, because I can't lie to you. The pressure on Biden is enormous, and it is growing and growing and growing, because it seems as if everybody is abandoning the sinking ship that is the Biden campaign. And one of the reasons why is because the polls are not very favorable towards Joe Biden right now, as it looks like Joe Biden is on the verge of losing some traditionally blue states, like, for example, New York, which now kind of is in play as a swing state, which is kind of unbelievable to think about. But again, Biden's losing states that went blue last election, and states that traditionally have been blue forever.
There is talk of some states that historically in recent history have not been as competitive suddenly becoming competitive. Walk us through those.
Yeah, so I'll give you two examples, because this is pre-debate polling from 2024, and look at these 2020 results. New York, this is a blue state. I don't think there's a Republican who's carried that in my lifetime, or certainly not when I was more than a year old. Look at this. Joe Biden won this state by 23 points. Look at this polling, though, that came out pre-debate. It was Biden just by 8 points. I wouldn't be surprised if that state is even closer now. Or how about in Virginia, right? A state that Joe Biden easily won last time around by 10 points. Pre-debate, the race there was tied. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some post-debate polling that actually has Joe Biden behind in Virginia. Who would have ever thought we'd see that? But the fact is, when we're looking at these states, New York, Virginia, Minnesota, New Hampshire, states that Joe Biden easily carried last time around, now all of a sudden the Donald Trump campaign thinks that they can put into play. And you know what? Based upon this data pre-debate, I believe they absolutely can.
Yeah, Virginia, at least you have a popular Republican governor, somebody that's been talked about as a dark horse vice presidential pick for Trump. So we'll see there.
Yeah, so again, we're in uncharted territory, guys, where New York is a battleground state. Now, again, we don't even know for certain how much of an effect the debate has had on states like New York, because we haven't done any polls yet. But again, common sense and logic would assume that Trump got at least a small bump since the debate in a state like New York, and he was closing in on Biden going into the debate. So again, this is a terrible situation for Democrats. I mean, behind closed doors, you have Democrats saying, yeah, I don't think that Joe Biden can win. Although people like Nancy Pelosi publicly are supporting him, but behind closed doors, they're all saying that, yeah, it's over, right? Like Joe Biden cannot win at this point. In fact, you have Nancy Pelosi giving the green light to Democrats to call for Biden to step aside. Again, while she's publicly standing by Joe Biden, behind closed doors, they're orchestrating a coup against Joe Biden. And again, it's not just Nancy Pelosi. We talked about Barack Obama earlier today and how he allegedly was involved with George Clooney coming out and calling for Joe Biden to step down. And you also have Chuck Schumer as well, too, who behind closed doors also is leaning towards having Joe Biden step down.
Meanwhile, there was another bombshell. Axios reporting that behind closed doors, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer has told donors he is open to a Democratic ticket that is not led by President Biden. Here now is Axios political reporter Hans Nichols. Great to have you, Hans, and what a scoop that you got. Tell us what you heard.
Well, thanks for having me. I want to be very clear about what we reported and how far we went. And the basic idea here is that Chuck Schumer is open to the idea of having someone other than Joe Biden be atop that ticket. He's not actively advocating for a swap, but he's listening to all his donors, his allies, and he's also having this big listening session with members of his own caucus, the Senate Democrats that make him majority leader. And yes, a lot of Democrats want to defeat Donald Trump, and that's very important to Democrats. But Chuck Schumer loses his job as Senate Majority Leader if the Senate loses their 51 seats. And so that's why this is so crucial to see what he's doing. He's mostly been silent, right? He's been giving this statement, I'm for Joe. He's now said that 4 times, at least in my presence. What we don't know is where he's truly at, and this is an indication that he's at least open to something.
Yeah, so again, it's funny because we're in a situation where you have Democrats openly lying in public, right? So they're lying to people and saying different things behind closed doors, but yet people think they can trust the Democrats. Again, this is why I love this drama. This is why I love the fact that Republicans, for the most part, have been quiet. Okay, they haven't made too much noise. They haven't been a distraction because people need to see the lying and the gaslighting of the Democrat Party in full view, which is happening right now, okay? You're seeing them come out and say publicly, oh, yeah, we're behind Joe Biden, but privately, they're not, right? They're trying to overthrow the guy, which tells you that they will lie to you about literally everything, okay? Like they have lied to us since forever. Again, it's just a shame that something like this has to happen for people to see it, but hey, it is what it is. I'm glad that it is in the spotlight. Now, again, one of the reasons why you have so many Democrats that are calling for Joe Biden to step down, whether that be publicly or privately, is not just because Biden is losing in the polls and because it's going to cost them their jobs, but it's also because the money is drying up. Apparently, the donors are saying, hey, we're about to cut Joe Biden off because we do not think that this guy can win, which is hilarious to think about because, again, these are the same people that were bragging about Trump's campaign being broke just a few months ago. Oh, Trump's so broke. Well, it seems as if Biden's the one that has to worry about money and campaign funding now.
Well, Fox News confirming there's been a major slowdown in the Biden campaign's fundraising. 2 well-connected Democrats revealing people are starting to tap on the brakes on President Biden in the wake of the debate. Just take a look at the new reports in just the last 24 hours. Everything is frozen. Democratic donors warn of campaign funds drying up as Joe Biden holds on, and it's already disastrous. One source close to the Biden campaign adding the money has absolutely shut off. And another revealing, quote, donors are negative. They had a call with the president. The call seemed so contrived to people. I don't think they buy it. Yeah. But the White House is calling all these reports, of course, not accurate. Tammy, what do you expect when the biggest fundraiser in Democratic Party history and a mega donor, George Clooney, he was the one that called off the spigot. So this is the natural reaction to that.
You know, what's strange to me is that whether it's Biden or someone else, the Democrat Party needs that money. Someone's going to run. Someone is going to need to for the down ballot races. That's what everyone's worried about.
Yeah, she brings up a good point. Somebody's going to need that money, okay? The Democrat Party needs the money, and it just so happens that the donors don't want the money to be used on Joe Biden. But there is one person that can use the money, and that is Kamala Harris. In fact, she's arguably the only person that can use that money, which is why she's the only viable candidate that can take over for Joe Biden. And it seems as if it is becoming more and more likely that Kamala Harris will, in fact, take over for Joe Biden as things continue to get worse for him. In fact, it is so bad that the Biden campaign is now conducting their own internal polling to see if Kamala Harris is a better option than Joe Biden to defeat Trump. This is coming from the Biden campaign. Take a look.
And finally, we just learned the Biden campaign is now polling on the possibility of a Harris candidacy. Our pollster surveyed voters on a hypothetical matchup between Vice President Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. What do those numbers show?
Yeah, those numbers were interesting. They were 49-46 Harris-Trump, so a slight lead there. But what's fascinating, and you just mentioned it, is we're learning now that the Biden campaign is doing their own head-to-head matchups internally. This is campaign internal polling. They're doing matchups against Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump. This obviously represents a strategic shift for the Biden campaign. It's raising all sorts of questions about whether Biden will step down or not now. The Biden campaign, for its part, says that we shouldn't think that this is just because Trump has been mentioning Harris more on the campaign trail. Kira.
All right, Catherine, thanks. And we've got
New York Times out this afternoon with this reporting. Quote, President Biden's campaign is quietly testing the strength of Vice President Kamala Harris against former President Trump in a head-to-head survey of voters. The survey, which is being conducted this week and was commissioned by the Biden campaign's analytics team, is believed to be the first time since the debate that Mr. Biden's aides have sought to measure how the vice president would fare at the top of the ticket. The results of that survey could determine whether Joe Biden remains at the top of the ticket. New York Times also reporting that a key group of advisors to the president believe that the strength of the vice president might sway his decision to stay in this race. Quote, a small group of Mr. Biden's advisors in the administration and the campaign have said they would have to convince the president of several things. They said they would have to make the case to the president, who remains convinced of the strength of his campaign, that he cannot win against former President Donald Trump. They have to persuade him to believe that another candidate, like Vice President Kamala Harris, could beat Mr. Trump. And they have to assure Mr. Biden that should he step aside, the process to choose another candidate would be orderly and not devolve into chaos in the Democratic Party. In a statement to the New York Times, the White House denied that there was an effort by members of President Biden's team to convince President Biden to exit the race.
Yeah, so you've seen that, you heard that. Now, this story is part of the reason why I am second guessing my prediction that Biden would ultimately stay in, that he wouldn't drop out. Because if this is true, then that means that the president probably is open to stepping down, but he doesn't want to step down unless he knows for certain that whoever replaces him can beat Trump. Now, Joe Biden seems to have drinking his own Kool-Aid from the Democrat Party and the liberal media after he, quote unquote, beat Trump in 2020. And he believes, well, I'm the only guy that can take down Trump. I am Trump's kryptonite, right? And he seems to truly, really believe that. This is why he doesn't want to drop out. But at the same time, if you are to believe people like Nancy Pelosi, then it seems as if Joe Biden's decision hasn't really been made yet. And that you have Democrats that are actively trying to convince him, despite Joe Biden publicly saying that, no, I'm not going to drop out. Among the Democrats that are trying to convince him are his own team, right? His own team is conducting a survey to see if Kamala Harris polls better against Trump than Biden in order to convince Joe Biden that, hey, you need to drop out. If you don't drop out, you're going to lose, and you will be the reason why Trump is reelected. And I told you guys that this decision for Joe Biden really is going to come down to legacy, because if he chooses to stay in and he loses to Trump, the liberal historians and the Democrat Party, they will say this guy was the worst president ever. They will tear Joe Biden a new one, okay? He will be hated in the Democrat Party for decades, okay? For centuries. But if he steps down and he lets somebody else take over, like, for example, Kamala, and Kamala happens to beat Trump, which, again, probably won't happen, okay? I think that Trump would definitely beat Kamala. But if Kamala happened to beat Trump, then they would say that Joe Biden is the greatest president ever, right? That Joe Biden, put aside his selfishness and let Kamala lead to save our democracy, right? This is what the narrative will be. Now, again, there's always a situation where Joe Biden steps aside and lets Kamala Harris take over and Kamala loses to Trump, right? In that case, Joe Biden probably will be pissed. He'll be pissed off at the Democrats because he will believe in his heart that, hey, I'm the one that could have beat Trump or that would have beat Trump, and I made a mistake by stepping aside, okay? Because I beat him before and I can beat him again, okay? I'm old Joe, right? Yeah, I mean, I personally think that it is getting more and more likely that Kamala Harris is going to take over. And this is why I really believe that if I was the Trump campaign, I would actually push back the announcement of the vice president. I really would. I honestly would be like, listen, we can't announce right now. We have to wait and see what's going to happen with the Democrats and what they're going to do. Because, I mean, honestly, at this point, Trump not announcing a vice president is not going to hurt him, right? It's not going to hurt him. However, if you announce a vice president now and then the Democrats turn around and they switch candidates, where it's Kamala and then it's somebody else on the ticket, that's a whole different race. It's a whole different ballgame, especially if Kamala selects a VP that actually is popular, who can make up for her deficiencies, right? It's a brand new race. So, you know, stories like this, they concern me because I'm not afraid of Kamala. I just understand that facing Kamala is just different than facing Biden, right? It's just a different race. And I think the Trump campaign has to be aware of that. I know they're aware of that. This is why they're now kind of coming out against Kamala. But I really do think that Trump should hold off on his VP selection until after the Democrats solidify who is going to be at the top of their ticket. Because, again, if it's Kamala, it's a different race. And Trump's VP pick, in my opinion, I think that you have to account for the possibility of Kamala, at the very least, taking more of a role in the Biden administration, if not outright becoming the nominee when you're deciding who should be your running mate. And, you know, obviously that shouldn't be the number one priority, but it's something that you have to keep in mind because, again, there's a different dynamic, and that dynamic needs to be accounted for. Now, again, obviously, Trump's VP pick has to be somebody that can lead the country, that's actually qualified, okay? And that has to always come first. But also at the same time, you know, winning the race is also a priority. And you really should not underestimate Kamala. I know that Kamala is a joke. She's a buffoon. She has the same problem that Biden has. The more you expose her to the public, the more people say, I really don't like that. However, she shouldn't be underestimated. And it seems as if it is getting closer and closer and closer to Kamala taking over for Biden. Again, if not outright becoming the nominee, at the very least, I expect to see Kamala just kind of taking more of a leading role and saying, you know, hey, a vote for Biden is actually a vote for me. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the Biden campaign comes out and says Kamala should be the one debating Trump. Let's swap out Biden for Kamala. Wouldn't be surprised. I'm just saying that it seems to me that you're going to see a lot more Kamala. They're going to roll with Kamala, and that is how they're going to navigate this situation. And that's something that the Republicans and the Trump campaign has to be prepared for. I'm sure they are. And again, this is why I think that it probably would be wise to kind of hold off on the VP pick. In fact, you know, I think they should probably just continue to chill and allow the Democrats to destroy themselves without making any major announcements that will take the news and the spotlight off of the Democrats. Because right now, the Democrat Party is imploding in front of the world to see, and you got to keep that up, right? This is something that you really don't want to take the attention off of them, because once the attention comes off the Democrats, it's going to go right back on Trump. And essentially that's what's going to happen if Kamala Harris becomes the nominee. They will stop talking about Kamala, and then all of a sudden now everything will be Trump. So you should take advantage of this moment while it's here, right? And not mess it up. I think that the vice presidential announcement should be pushed back just to see what the Democrats are going to do and to allow the implosion of the Democrat Party to continue. But let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.